Yeah, it's good to be here together with you all. I'm learning a lot. I just wanted to present some terms here before I get started, talking about PNG as Papua New Guinea, where I've spent the last 8 years doing a lot of research and consulting with different language projects. SIL is for SIL International and its branch there in PNG. The speakers that I'm talking about are the local native speakers, speakers of their own mother tongue, and of course they're the primary stakeholders in the orthography enterprise. SIL teams are usually expatriate missionaries trained in linguistics and literacy translation principles. And the language project would include the SIL team working together with the language communities, including alphabet committees and other committees. Bridging is the word I use to describe the local orthographies when they represent more or less the alphabet and the sounds used by the national language, or the language of wider communication, which is an important concept in the PNG situation. I'm sorry if some of you are disappointed. I won't be addressing tone or writing in tone, but just talking about basic graphemes, the phonemes that are represented by the graphemes that I've done research on. Okay, here's a map from Ethnologue. You know you're in trouble when the country is subdivided into 18 different language maps. There's a lot of languages there. Here, just focusing on one corner, you can see 50 or 60 languages from 10 different language families, all clustered in this small area, about 5%, equal to 5% of the area of France. So lots of languages. 841 living languages, according to Ethnologue. Only 164 are listed as either in trouble or dying, which is a pretty good percentage based on Wikipedia that says 50 to 90% of languages will disappear before the end of the century. SIL's work in PNG has served 337 language communities. We're currently active in 187, and there's lots of our resources made public on the internet, so you can go look for resources based on the language name or the author or the type of article you're looking for, grammars, phonologies, and so forth. The presentation I'm making represents 221 of the languages in which SIL has worked. Okay, just talking about official languages in PNG. English is taught in schools. Tok Pisin is the English-based Pidgin or Creole, depending on where the community. And it's mostly used along the north coast, in the islands, and in the highlands. And then there's Hiri Motu, which is a simplified version of the Motu language, which is Austronesian, and that's mostly used along the south coast. The research I did, here's a chart at the beginning of a chart that shows the languages and from which provinces those languages occur. So these are the biggest provinces that have the most languages in my research. You'll notice the three middle columns represent 3 different time periods. And so the second column is from data that was collected in the branch from pre-1990. And then the middle column has to do with orthographic and phonological descriptions, which took place up to 2010. And then the fourth column is languages that are represented in a questionnaire that responded to a questionnaire that I gave to current language projects. And then the totals are put there on the far right. Okay, and also language families that are represented in my research. You have the same 3 columns there in the middle. Languages from Trans-New Guinea, which is really a catch-all group of language families that are non-Austronesian, and then Austronesian and Sepik, Torricelli, and so on. And there are other fewer languages from other language families. I didn't include the whole chart because you wouldn't be able to see it. Just giving you an example of a phoneme collection from a few different languages. Rodokas is arguably the language with the fewest phonemes in the world. This is a North Bougainville language, and you can see the vowels and the consonants there. Tawala is an Austronesian language with 19 phonemes, and you can see that there's a couple different phonemes with labialization, which is a common feature to many languages in Papua New Guinea. Here, Melpa is Trans-New Guinea. They have 26 phonemes, and there's a lot of what we call pre-nasalization going on in that language, and many other languages in Papua New Guinea have this same feature. Alecano is a Trans-New Guinea language with just 16 phonemes, and they have an odd vowel there as well as a velar fricative. Sud-Est is the largest phoneme inventory in my research. They have 40 phonemes, and you can see there's a collection of prenasalization, labialization, and sometimes both on the same phoneme, as well as some affricates and some palatalization and so on. So it's a challenge, you might imagine, to represent all these phonemes faithfully in an orthography. And we'll see here in a few minutes that that's not always done. Just to show you that there are a different number of languages in each of my 3 sections, 3 time sections of research. So I did the raw data numbers and then divided by percentages to get a weighted mean for each section. So I'm able to compare the 3 sections, even though there are different numbers of languages in each section. Okay, and I looked at 6 different strategies that these language teams use for writing the languages. And so we're going to look at each one of those in turn. Talking about diacritics, things like the diaeresis or tilde or acute marks. These are commonly used in writing systems in PNG. And you can see that the bold numbers there from 160 to 197 to 298, that shows an increase in use of diacritics through the years. And just what the trend might show, the use of diacritics in orthographies employed by the projects are mostly on the vowel systems. And so you'll find that, say, for a nasalized set of vowels, you're going to be using at least 5 different, or 5 of the same diacritics. Or also for vowel length, that there's a diacritic used for vowel length. And so all 5 vowels or all 7 vowels have this feature. And so there's a lot of use of diacritics for those purposes. We also see in the language Gizra here, they have a 7 vowel system, and so they use 2 different diacritics for the extra vowel sounds. An acute mark there over the O for the schwa sound, and then for the schwa phoneme, and then the diaeresis on the U for the upper middle unrounded vowel. Okay, and again, many languages show diacritics, show nasalization with diacritics, or vowel length. And so you can have 3 sets of vowels, for instance, and two-thirds of them have diacritics. Anyway, another strategy that is commonly used is the multigraph, talking about digraphs or trigraphs, and an occasional tetragraph. And you can see those numbers are increasing as you go from left to right. And so that shows an increase in use for multigraphs in language projects, in orthographies. And these are mostly used in over-differentiation for things like prenasalization and labialization. Sometimes the orthography doesn't require phonemically these digraphs, but since English is the national language, people go to school and they learn English and they see words like combine and condition, and they hear the 2 sounds, the nasal and the plosive, and they see 2 letters. And so they figure they need 2 letters in their language as well. And then words like twin and quick are showing a labialization of the consonants, which again we have 2 letters for in English. And so it's a common community felt need to use digraphs, even if it's phonemically not necessary. And of course, looking at the Sud-Est language, seeing all the labialization going on there and prenasalization, the phonemes are above and the graphemes are below. And so you can see all the that they're using the same strategy, digraphs and trigraphs, for these things. And so there's a lot of multigraph usage going on in the same language because the feature is so common. Okay, the third strategy used that I researched, talking about under-differentiation, which includes phonemes that are not written, but an example would be to have the letter E used for both the A phoneme and the schwa phoneme. And there are a number of good reasons to do this. It's perhaps one has a low functional load. But anyway, there's been a significant increase in using under-differentiation for orthographies in PNG. And so, whoops. Possible reasons for this. I looked at the increase in technology, the use of technology in the country. There's a lot of cell phone use going on in just the last 5 or 7 years. And there's a felt need in communities for people to communicate with each other using different electronic devices. Again, as in the Sud-Est letters, the orthography used, it may be desirable for certain reasons to express all of these phonemes with different orthographs, and yet the challenge is to find enough orthographs on a cell phone to adequately do that. So it's possible that the community has a felt need for reducing the number of untextable letters in the alphabet. It makes it easier for them to communicate. Over-differentiation is another strategy that's used. Sometimes, again, for prenasalization, they'll use both the B letter and the MB digraph to represent the B phoneme. And we see that there's an eventual decrease in the use of over-differentiation in alphabets. Okay, again, a possible reason for this is the technology that's come up. Also, a possibility is that there's a felt need for shorter words, that digraphs would be used for bridging purposes, but it might be difficult. It might be making words unwieldy long. And so, so it's possible they would use under differentiation. In the Urim language, for example, it was mentioned that the long vowels, that they were using double letters for long vowels, but they decided not to write them as double letters. And it turns out that they were only phonemic in one-syllable words anyway, so there's a low functional load for that. Another strategy is using English letters not used elsewhere, things like a C or a Q or an X. And there's been a decrease in use of these. It was common to use C or Q for the glottal stop phoneme, and that's fallen out of use. And again, from a bridging perspective, a letter C in English, lots of students are learning from the very first day of school that C is for cat. That's for the K sound in cat. It's not for a glottal stop. And so it doesn't feel right to them from a bridging perspective. And the last strategy, talking about non-English letters, things like apostrophes or question mark looking thing. And there's been an eventual decrease in use of these, although there's an increase in the use of the ang, the N with a tail for the velar nasal. Okay, this is perhaps to be expected, again, considering the spread of technology and how these letters are just not found on regular cell phones or inexpensive cell phones and computers. Some non-English letters are found on smartphones if you press a button and wait for the options to pop up, but they're usually diacritics and not non-English letters. Just looking at the questionnaire responses for present teams at work in PNG, it's been difficult. General challenges are developing an alphabet for multiple dialects, breaking habits from previous orthography choices, for instance, the German colonial influence where they used CH a lot for a velar fricative, or the Fijian influence, just using a G for the velar nasal or a Q. So those are influences that are no longer happening, and yet they are ingrained in some of those language communities. Just talking about the stakeholders in the orthography enterprise, the teachers were employed. Many of them were trained to be literacy teachers in the languages. Lots of informal meetings, but also traditional leaders, community leaders, church leaders. These people were called to form committees responsible for making a lot of the orthography decisions. There were also challenges in that way in different subgroups of stakeholders, considering the age of the person, the older people versus the younger people, if you have a lot of education or not so much, and again, dialect challenges. Orthographic strategies that needed changing. A lot of the responders talked about differentiation, needing to change the amount of differentiation that they used. Okay. And what do you do with more than 5 vowels? Digraphs, of course, in English we use digraphs a lot, but they're easily confused. And they can be easily confused with diphthongs. So I just, overall impressions were less of a felt need to fully reflect the phonemic reality in the language, more of a felt need for written language to mirror the official languages of English and Tok Pisin, talking about bridging, and again, more of a felt need to have a simpler orthography to utilize technology in one's mother tongue. So.
Yeah, thank you. So we have time for some questions, maybe 2, 3 shorter questions. Yes, please.
Is there a national strategy of some sort to standardize orthography or pull them together, something like the Nigerian collection?
Not in Papua New Guinea. We are responsible to report on our work to the PNG government, and those OPDs from the middle section, the middle time section, represent the work that we hand in to the PNG government so that they know about our work. They know about the languages. Yeah.
Any other questions? Yes, please.
Have you considered using variable differentiation depending on the frequency of words? So representing very frequent words in a simple but not very precise way, so that you obtain some kind of a zip law?
I wasn't privy to a lot of those decisions, but just got responses to the questionnaire, and nothing was reported about those decisions. SIL has a lot of literacy training, and they do a lot of testing as they develop their alphabets, but I don't. It wasn't part of my research to check the specifics for each team.
Okay, one more question. If there are no questions, thank you very much.
Okay.